Welcome to the Newsome MMA betting podcast sponsored by CBD Live UK. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and tonight I'm going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night 134 from Hamburg, Germany. Now I'm stoked for this card as I'll be watching it live in Hamburg. I fly out Friday, I come back Tuesday, so it's going to be a nice short break for me. And for those who don't know, this is a Sunday card which starts at about 3:30 in the afternoon in the UK, which means it'll be a morning card for you guys over the pond. And with all that out of the way, let's break down UFC Hamburg from bottom to top. And your first fight of the evening, we've got Damir Stasiak against Liu Pingguan. Now, I haven't really got too much of a read on this. I haven't taped it too much. Obviously, I know a lot about Damir Stasiak. I haven't really seen anything of Pingguan, but I'm going to be favouring Stasiak here. I just think that he's fought better competition, albeit he's lost his last two fights to Brian Kelleher and Pedro Munoz. But, you know, the Pedro Munoz fight was a really good fight. He was a huge underdog in that, if I remember rightly, Stasiak. And to be honest with you, he really didn't fight like that much of an underdog. It was a much closer fight than a lot of people anticipated, me included as well, because I had a bet on Pedro Munoz that night. So yeah, good performance against Pedro Munoz. Brian Kelleher, again, it was a good back and forth battle. Brian Kelleher is obviously legit as well. We've seen that in his fight with Lineker. Yeah, he lost the fight pretty comfortably, but you know that doesn't always tell the full story. I thought he fought well against Lineker. He had his moments, but Lineker's just a tough dude to beat. So, you know, Stasiak's been in there in his last two fights with some really top-notch guys. His fight before that was a win against David Grant, who was also fighting on this card. This will be his first fight back since that fight, actually. And again, Stasiak did a pretty good job in that to win, because, in my opinion, he was losing that fight until he managed to secure that armbar and submit Grant. So yeah, I think Stasiak's decent. You know, moving on to Pingguan, you know, he's 11-5. You know, fought regionally in the WLF. Don't really know much about that organisation, I'll be honest. But the one thing to mention is the dude hasn't lost in about 5 years. So it'll be really interesting to see, you know, what he's going to look like coming into the UFC. You know, he's won his last 7 fights in a row, so he's going to be coming in with some confidence for sure. But yeah, like I say, I don't know too much about the guy, but I would imagine that the vet experience from Damir Stasiak here should be good enough to beat him. And the last thing to mention with Stasiak is he's an all-round decent MMA fight. You know, he's not... He doesn't shine in one specific area over another. He's just got a good all-round game. So I would imagine wherever this fight goes, he should be pretty comfortable also. I'll take him by decision. I'm not sure if there's going to be a finish or not. Like I say, I haven't looked too much into this fight. It's not something that I thought was worth taping. I've got a couple of bets on this card that I'm really confident in. So yeah, Stasiak by decision. Then your next fight, we've got Jeremy Kimball against Darko Stosic. Now, this is a fight that I taped, and I taped it to fade Jeremy Kimball. And the only reason being is, I just don't think he's prolific in any one area. He's got an all-round game, but I do think that he's a beatable guy, and he's a good fighter. You know, he's got skills. He's got decent power on his feet. He's not got a bad ground game either. But the problem is, and we saw it in his last fight with Dominic Reyes, he just made some bad decisions on the ground, which ultimately left him open to the rear naked choke, which Reyes secured. Now, it's things like that that sort of make a fighter unbettable from a betting perspective. You know, just little things, you know, slight mistakes that sort of costing these fighters the fight overall. And, you know, that's why ultimately I wanted to watch tape to see if I could fade him. Now, I run the tape on Darko Stosic, and I spotted a few things. First of all, you know, he's 12-1. He's got 7 wins by knockout. He's got 4 by decision. They're sort of stats that I quite like, because what that shows to me is he looks for the knockout, so he's got power. 7 wins by knockout, you know, that they're not flukes. The dude's got legit power, and he's a big guy as well, which I'll move on to shortly. But what it shows me is when he doesn't get the knockout, he can win a decision, which usually means that they've got decent cardio, that they can point fight when needs be, they can stay out of that danger whilst they're throwing bombs. There's a lot of things that tells me on record. So I run the tape on him, and I pretty much saw exactly what I thought I was going to see. The problem is with Stasiak, I just don't think he throws enough volume. He tends to look for the big shots, and because of that, because he's not throwing a great deal in his fights, I think that's also why his cardio holds up. He's a big guy, he's got a lot of muscle, and this is another thing I'm going to move moving on to, because the dude looks absolutely jacked in his fights. And I mean, just go and watch tape on him. He looks absolutely huge. And I'm not going to make any assumptions or anything like that, but I did hear on the grapevine from somebody on Twitter, I think it was, I don't remember who it is, I apologise. And they actually said to me that they've seen him lately in his preparations for this fight in the UFC, and he does look a lot smaller than what he does on tape. So it does raise a few questions, and it will raise a few eyebrows. If this is the case, and we see him on the scales and he looks a lot smaller than what we've seen in tape. So I'm not convinced with the volume side of stuff from a style fight, and also, the stuff that I'm hearing as well. That may or may not be true, but, when I'm coming to lay money down, I'm not going to take that chance. I'm not going to think, oh, well, you know what, that guy could be wrong. Because if that guy wasn't wrong and the information that I was given was legit, then I'll just regret the bet. And to be honest with you, it's not a fight that I really want to touch. I'm actually picking Jeremy Kimball to win. Stasiak has been knocked out before, albeit 2014, a while ago. But Kimball packs power, and I don't think that he's a slouch on the feet at all. And I think this is where the fight will take place. I think when Stasiak comes forward, I think he'll be able to find openings. I mean, absolutely, Stasiak could flatline Jeremy Kimball as well. He packs power. Like I say, he's a big dude from obviously what I've seen in tape. He could definitely knock Jeremy Kimball out. That's not something that you can dismiss. But again, I just think that when you're looking at Kimball, this is his fourth fight in the UFC. His losses to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, that was short notice if I remember rightly, and also he was doing quite well in that fight, and he slipped, and as he slipped, de Lima jumped on him and started landing some ground and pound, which ultimately finished him off. Without that slip, I honestly think that Kimball would have done a far better job and really tested Lima in that fight. The next fight, he fought Josh Stansbury. He knocked him out with some weird donkey punch, but again, the power that he generated from such a short distance was really incredible to see. And then his last loss to Dominic Reyes, and anybody that knows me and listened to the breakdown when I bet Dominic Reyes in his last fight against I forget his name, against Jared Cannonier, that's it. I'm really high on Dominic Reyes. I think he's got a really high ceiling. He's going to be up there in the top 10, potentially top 5 as well. Who knows how much further he goes from there also. So it's not it's not a bad loss, Dominic Reyes, at all. So I think Jeremy Kimball's got the experience in there, and he's going to test the debutant for sure. So I've got Jeremy Kimball, and I think he will catch Darko Stasiak at some point. I think somebody's going out, whether it be Kimball or whether it be Stasiak, but the pick's going to be Jeremy Kimball by knockout. And then in the next fight, we've got the rescheduled fight. We've got Davy Grant versus Manny Bermudez. These guys were supposed to have fought a few weeks ago. I believe it was Manny Bermudez that pulled out. I could be wrong about that. I can't really remember. But I was stoked to see the fight at that point back then. And I was really disappointed when it got pulled off the card. It wasn't, the line wasn't bettable or anything like that. So it was purely just from a fan point of view of watching this, because Manny Bermudez has got a great ground game. His transitions are just amazing to watch. His submission game solid. I just think everything about his ground game is just legit. And this is what I'm really looking forward to, because David Grant hasn't got a bad ground game either. He's got a decent guard from bottom as well, so he does throw up triangles and arm bars and things like that. I think he's a better striker than he is a grappler, though. I'm just saying that he's got, he's not a slouch on the ground. He's got good Muay Thai, he's got good kicks and elbows. We saw that in his last fight against Damir Stasiak, that he was getting the better of Stasiak and he was controlling the fight. Manny Bermudez, there's some questions regarding how good at this level in the UFC he is on his feet. We'll definitely see in this fight. It's a question that will be answered. But ultimately, I like Manny Bermudez. I think that if the fight doesn't go to the ground, I think David Grant's I think he will win. From what I've seen of Manny Bermudez in his debut, I do think David Grant's got the better striking. Who knows how improved Manny Bermudez is, and how improved he is from his last fight. So that's also a possibility that his striking's improving fight by fight. You do notice that sometimes when you get a grappling heavy fighter coming into the UFC, they tend to sharpen the tools that tend to be the weaknesses. So just going off what I've seen on tape, I think that David Grant will win if the fight stays on the feet. But ultimately, I think at some point in the fight, Manny Bermudez is going to be able to get David Grant down. And once the fight is on the mat, I think you're just in the world of Manny Bermudez here, and very few are able to stop what he wants to do when he's on top of you. And I just think that'll be the same scenario here. I think it's going to be a really fun fight. I think a potential of fight of the night as well, for sure. And as I said in my last fight with the Jeremy Kimball and Darko Stosic fight, I think this is another one that won't go the distance. I think it will be a Bermudez submission or a David Grant knockout or TKO. I'm going to go with Manny Bermudez by submission, though. I think he does get it to the ground. I think he does work Grant, and his submission game is just really legit. So Manny Bermudez by submission is the pick. And then in the next fight, we move into my first bet of the night. We've got Justin Ledet against Aleksandar Rakic. The bet's Rakic. I got him at an underdog price. It's slowly drifting now. I think he will end up the favourite by fight night. That's just a guess. So, don't put too much stock in that. But I've got 3 units on Rakic at plus 138 to win, 4.1 back. Now, Rakic is someone that I'm really, really high on. He's a guy that I know quite well. I've also met him as well through Heavy Duty Fight Management. I work closely with Heavy Duty and the owner, Carl Messon, over there. So I do know a lot about these heavy duty fighters, and I really, really like what I'm seeing with Rakic. This isn't a biased bet. I'm sure a lot of people might think it because of the work that I do with heavy duty, but the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what work I do with anybody. I'm not going to risk, my money. I'm not going to risk the potential people that are tailing my bets. I'm not going to risk their money either. That would just be a stupid thing to do. I just think that Rakic has got more weapons in his arsenal to beat Justin Ledet now. Ledet's moving down from heavyweight, so he wasn't a big heavyweight either, just to mention that. So he was never a huge heavyweight, normally weighing in at about 235, I think. Obviously, the heavyweight limit's 265. So he was sort of a midweight heavyweight. Now, what that meant for him at heavyweight is he often had a speed advantage against a lot of his opponents. You specifically noticed that against Chase Sherman. He boxed him up for 3 rounds spectacularly. He has got a good boxing game. He's got a great jab, one of the best jabs, in my opinion, in MMA and UFC right now, at least anyway. And he's also got a good jab switch to lead hook as well, which is really unorthodox and tends to catch a lot of fighters out. Now, that being said, I think that he's not going to have a speed advantage in this fight. I think the speed advantage is going to go to Aleksandar Rakic, which is going to be something new for Justin Ledet. So we'll see how he copes with that. And I just think that, I don't know, I feel that Ledet's a little bit overrated. I could be wrong. If he comes out here and he beats Rakic, then absolutely hands down. I'll say I was wrong. I got that one wrong. But I mean, when you look at his 3 wins in the UFC, you've got Chase Sherman, you've got Marc Godbeer, and you've got Azuna Anyanwu. Anyanwu was short notice. He Ledet beat him comfortably for 2 rounds. In the 3rd round, it was very, very hairy for him, and Yanru seemed to have figured out how to get around his jab and this lead hook that he switches from the jab. So he did eventually figure him out in the cage, and he did start to land some hard shots. So it would have been interesting to see if Yanru had figured him out sort of a bit earlier, maybe even halfway through the 2nd round, because that would have been really interesting to see how that fight would have played out. So I just feel that Ledet is untested for sure. And do you know what? If I'm being fair, you could say the same for Rakic as well. He's had 1 fight in the UFC. It was Francimar Barrows. Barrows isn't with the UFC anymore. I think he signed with ACB. Could be wrong about that, but he has signed with another organisation. So you could say the same for Rakic. But the one thing I will say in this situation is I think that both guys, this is their biggest test in their MMA careers. For either guy. So it's going to be a really interesting one. Now, for me, I think that Justin Ledet doesn't have too much outside his boxing game in regards to the techniques that I've already mentioned. I think that anybody that can game plan against Ledet's jab, I think has got a really good chance of beating him. And I just think Rakic can do that. He's at the right gym at American Top Team. They will have all watched tape on Ledet. They'll have all seen the stuff that I've seen, and probably guys that are listening to this podcast, the stuff that you've seen as well. Everyone will have seen what Justin Ledet's about by now, and I just think that ATT will be able to figure out a really good game plan to get around that. I mean, it's not a crushing jab or anything, but it's a really good weapon for him. And I think if you take that away, I think he's very beatable. I think that he's also got a wide stance as well, so his lead leg is available to be kicked. I think Rakic will make use of that as well. I think he'll be mixing his kicks into his combinations. And Rakic is no slouch on the feet either. He's a powerful dude. He's got 7 wins by knockout out of 9, 1 submission, 1 decision. He's flatlined so many fighters in round 1, and that's not to be snuffed at all. I think that I don't think this fight's going to end in round 1. I think it's going to be a bit methodical at first. I think that both fighters are going to have a feeling out process. Ledet throwing that jab out, but I honestly believe Rakic is going to have an answer for it, whether it be a counter over the top, whether it be slipping, and then throwing a leg kick just to make Ledet pay for every jab that he throws. Once he's starting to pay for every jab that he throws, he's going to stop throwing it as much. He's going to then start thinking a little bit more. Once you start thinking too much in the cage, then that's going to be trouble for you. I think Rakic is going to be able to pressure him. He's got a great striking arsenal himself. He's got powerful uppercuts. He's got good 1-2s. He mixes his leg kicks in with combinations. So starting with leg kicks, ending with leg kicks. And ultimately, I think the leg kicks is what's going to end up winning him this fight, because I think that he's going to hit that lead leg of Ledet a lot early on. I think, I don't think at that point when he's hitting the leg a lot, he's going to start slowing Ledet down. He's not going to have so much pop in the jab. Again, he's going to stop throwing the jab because he'll be paying for these leg kicks. So I just think over the course of the fight, if it goes the distance, I think that Rakic can definitely beat Ledet on the scorecards with aggression, pressure, and ultimately power. I think if he does start connecting on Ledet and accumulating strikes, I think he'll put him out. Rakic has got raw power. You look at his photos that he's posting on Instagram, the dude's massive, absolutely massive. I'm telling you, I honestly believe people are going to be woke with Alex Rakic after this fight. I think that if you haven't noticed him already, you definitely will after this fight. Ultimately, I think that Rakic is gonna stop Ledet. I can just envisage it happening. Ledet's going to come out, and I think he's going to be able. I think Ledet is going to think that he's going to be able to get away with this jab in this fight. But the bottom line is Aleksandar Rakic isn't Anyanwu, he isn't Marc Godby, and he isn't Chase Sherman. He's a much technical striker than all those three, and I think we're really going to see the holes in Ledet's striking here, because I think that he's been able to look good for a reason because of his speed and because that jab's worked against his previous opponents. I don't think it's going to work here. I think Rakic is going to stop him mid to late fight after he's torn his leg down a little bit, after he's popped him with a few shots himself. Really, sort of demoralised Ledet in there, and I just think it's going to be a long night for Justin Ledet. So I've got Aleksandar Rakic to win by knockout mid to late fight. The next fight, we've got Khalid Taha against Narimini. Now, this is going to be another really great fight. You've got Narimini, you've got Taha, who's from Germany himself, so he's going to be fighting in front of his home crowd. He's 12-1. He's got 7 wins by knockout, 3 submissions, 2 decisions, so pretty much a knockout artist. He fought in Brave back in May, just a couple of months ago, and he's also been in Rising as well, so he's definitely battle tested. To what sort of extent, I'm not really sure. I haven't dug too much into tape with this. And then you got Narimini coming from England. He's supposed to have fought Nasrat Haqparast a couple of times now. Both those times, I think both of them pulled out at different times. I think one pulled out for the first fight and the other pulled out for the second fight. It just wasn't to be. So they've both been matched up on this card. Nasrat Haqparast is also fighting on this card, which I'll talk about shortly. I just think that Khalid Taha is going to come out aggressive. I think he's going to start winging bombs. But what Narimini's got, if he doesn't like that, is he can level change and take him down. We saw that against Paddy Pimblett. He really put it on Paddy Pimblett and really shocked. I think he shocked a lot of people in that fight, because Paddy Pimblett at this point, there was a lot of hype on him. He was on a win streak himself. A lot of great things surrounded him, and Narimini went in there and beat him unanimously over 5 rounds. So I think that he can do the same to Khalid Taha as well. If he gets too aggressive and comes forward too hard, I think he can level change and take him down. Ultimately, I think that's probably what will happen, because if Taha's throwing bombs at him, I just don't think Narimini is going to want any of that whatsoever. So the pick's Narimini to win by unanimous decision. The next fight of the night, we've got my next bet as well. We've got Emil, Meek and Bartosz Fabinski. Now, it was interesting with this because BetSafe are a Scandinavian bookie, and Emil Meek is also Scandinavian. I think he's got some sponsorship with BetSafe as well. So it's weird because every time Emil Meek fights, BetSafe instantly open odds for his fights, and he's a guy that I think is actually a good fighter. So when they dropped the odds out, it was pretty much a pick 'em between Meek and Fabinski, and I thought to myself at the time, I'm going to take this early because I honestly see Emil Meek being steamed by other handicappers and the public as well, and I see his price going really high. So at a pick 'em, I thought, well, I'll tape it early and I'll see what I see, and if I like it, I'll take the bet right now and wait. So I taped. I didn't know anything about Fabinski at this time, so I taped Fabinski, and man, I was shocked. Like I said, the same thing last week with JDS. I went into tape, wanting to bet Ivanov. This week, I ended up betting JDS. This week I went into tape wanting to bet Emil Meek, and I ended up betting Bartosz Fabinski. I've got 3 units on Fabinski at plus 185, huge underdog price. But man, I love him, and this is the epitome of a type of fighter that I just do not mind laying money down at all. He's a brute force grinder. He wastes no time closing the distance. His only intention is to get a hold of his opponent and rag him to the ground. He's powerful. He's strong. He's just direct. He's completely and utterly direct, and he's relentless. He's a relentless grappler, and I love that. In the 2 fights that he's had in the UFC, we've seen him fight Gareth McClellan, which you'll probably be thinking, well, that's a different weight class. You'd be right to think that. Bartosz Fabinski used to fight at middleweight. He got 10 takedowns on Gareth McClellan. Now, Gareth McClellan isn't a fighter that set the world alight in the UFC, but the one thing the guy is huge and powerful. He's strong himself. Bartosz Fabinski, I think, was slightly undersized in that fight against McClellan, yet he kept picking him up and tossing him about and ragging him all over and dumping him time and time again. The reason he got 10 takedowns is because he tends to stall on top quite a lot, so referees do often stand him up, but every time the referee would stand McClellan and Fabinski up, Fabinski would honestly just go and watch the tape. I'm not exaggerating one little bit. He would stand up. He would just walk straight in a straight line straight towards McClellan. He'll throw a couple of jabs out so he don't get hit himself, and then bang, clinches him again, pushes him against the cage, picks him up and dumps him once again. This is at middleweight against a big, strong Gareth McClellan. Now Fabinski is dropped down to welterweight. He's definitely going to have a huge size advantage physically. So in regards to power and strength, he's going to totally outpower Meek. I don't think Meek's small, but he's going to be outmuscled in this fight for sure. We saw as well in the Usman fight that Meek can be taken down. Now, I'm not going to compare the wrestling between Usman and Fabinski because that would just be stupid. We all know that Usman's one of the best grapplers and the best wrestlers in the UFC. So that comparison is not going to be there, but you look slightly past that just for 1 minute. And the things that I saw was, I saw Meek defending the takedowns reasonably well for the first few seconds against Usman. But then after the first few seconds, it almost seemed like the resistance stopped quite quickly. And when it stopped, he knew he was going to go down, so he would be jumping on guillotines, trying to submit Usman, which was always going to be a tough ask, and I think it's going to be a tough ask in this fight as well, even though it is a concern. So to me, I just think the same thing's going to happen. I think Fabinski is going to close the distance. I think he is going to get a hold of Emil Meek, and I think that he is going to resist initially quite well, but then I think after about 5 or 10 seconds, when Fabinski's not going anywhere, I ultimately think he's just going to give in with the takedowns, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm not, because like I say, I've got the money on Fabinski, but I'm just going from what I've seen on tape, and I just think that Meek's going to be quite easy to take down. Now, if he jumps on guillotines, it is a slight worry, as I've just mentioned a little bit, because I don't think Fabinski tucks his head in on every shot, so his neck might be there to be wrapped around, but I don't envisage it happening. I think you're gonna have to be a tough motherfucker to put Fabinski out and to tap him with a guillotine while he's on top. The other thing to mention as well is, you know, he's not got much hair. You might think this is crazy where I'm about to go with this, but once they start sweating, once it gets later in the rounds, that guillotine is going to be harder and get harder and harder to pull off. So I don't envisage it happening. It's possible. But I just don't envisage it. The other path to victory for Meek, and I think he will win in this situation, is if for whatever reason Fabinski can't get him down, he can't get takedowns, and Meek keeps cutting out of the clinches and separating. If he does those things and the fight stays standing, I think that there is a big skill gap on the feet. But ultimately, we don't see Fabinski in too much trouble on the feet because he doesn't stay at distance. He will close the distance at every single opportunity. He's I think he's the most relentless MMA fighter in regards to embracing the grind that I think I've ever seen. And this is definitely something that I'd love to bet on. I think that he is going to be able to close the distance. Will he struggle taking Meek down? Maybe he will to start with, but what he'll do is not let go of him. He'll be smothering him against the cage in the clinch. That'll be doing two things. That'll be wearing Meek down, and that'll also be ticking the clock down as well in an advantageous position. He might not be doing anything, but there's no way Meek will be able to get ahead on the judges' scorecards if he's just getting pressed against on the cage. That's then the referee's job to split them. But, you know, Fabinski tends to just do just enough to maybe keep the referees off him in clinch. It tends to be on the ground that he stalls a little bit more. But again, I'm not worried if he stalls on the ground and they get back up, because he'll take him down again. The longer this fight goes on, the more takedowns Fabinski will hit. You also saw that with Hector Urbina as well. There was actually, I was told about this, I've not heard it myself, but there was an interview before the Hector Urbina fight, I think it was. And I think it was Brian Stan that interviewed Fabinski and asked if he's going to showcase a little bit of his striking against Hector Urbina. And apparently Fabinski just looked at him, gone out, as in like, are you daft? And he actually turned around to Stan and said, no. He said, I'm going to walk towards him. I'm going to take him down like I do with everybody else. Man, I love those guys. Like, just stick to what you know, stick to what you're good at, and stick to getting those wins. So I love Fabinski in this spot. I don't think he finishes Meek. Meek's tough as shit, but I do think he takes him down at will. I do think he controls him on the ground. I think when when the ref stands back up to inactivity, Fabinski will just walk towards him again. Meek will just get taken down time and time again. It'll demoralise him. It'll take his wind out. It'll take his stamina out. And like I say, the longer the fight goes on, the easier it'll get for Fabinski. So I've got 3 units on Bartosz. Fabinski at plus 185, and I think he gets it done by decision. The next fight, we've got Nick Hein versus Damir Hadzovic. Now, it's again another good fight. Nick Hein coming off his loss to David Hamos. And then we've got Damir Hadzovic coming off his loss to Alan Patrick. It's a tough fight to pick this, and it's not one that I would definitely recommend betting at all. I think that Nick Hein has got the more technical game. I think that Hadzovic has got more power. But Hadzovic isn't a slouch either from a technical perspective. Apologies, struggling to get that out. But where Hadzovic has got the technical perspective as well, I think that he lacks in the ground game, that's where I think that Nick Hein's got an advantage, because he has got good takedowns, he has got decent top control. But the thing that worries me a little bit, and I think this is the reason why you probably shouldn't bet this fight, is Alan Patrick is a guy that I'm a huge fan of. He's won me a lot of money. He's, again, another relentless takedown artist and grappler, but Patrick struggled in some aspects. Yeah, he got Hadzovic down quite a few times, but he was made to work for it each time. And I just think if Alan Patrick's having that sort of, not difficulty, but being made to work, I assume that Nick Hein would find it also extremely difficult to take Hadzovic down. But I think he can. And I think that's the reason why I am slightly edging to Nick Hein. It's not a confident pick. I think that Nick Hein could get knocked out. Damir Hadzovic has got some good Muay Thai. He's got some crisp striking to go with that as well, to go with his power. So Damir Hadzovic could definitely put Nick Hein down and put him out. But I think that if it's getting a little bit too much for Nick Hein, I think that he's got the wrestling to fall back on. He might be made to work for it, but I think his cardio and his gas tank's quite good. So I think eventually, if he really wants to take downs, they can come. And that's the reason I'm picking Nick Hein to win by decision. Now, next fight, first fight on the main card, we've got Nasrat Haqparast against Marc Diakiese. And again, Marc Diakiese is another fighter under the heavy duty banner, so another fighter that I know a lot about, and I think that Marc's gonna win this one. Haqparast isn't the slouch that some people think he is. He's actually a fighter that I think is quite good. I think he's got a decent ceiling, and I think he'll get some UFC wins. I just don't think that he's gonna win this fight. So he's coming off a short notice loss to Marcin held. He ended up losing by decision to Marcin held, and the first round was very good, and he was doing well as well until Held started finding the takedowns and smothering on top. Held's got a crushing grappling game, even though he's not with the UFC anymore. He's still a world-class grappler. But I did like what I saw from Haqparast, and watching tape from his region stuff as well. He's quick, he's crisp. He trains at King's MMA with Master Rafael Cordero, which is obviously well known in the world of mixed martial arts. And he also splits his time at King's MMA with TriStar as well. So you've got a guy that's a very, very good Muay Thai coach in Master Rafael Cordero, and then you've also got the game plan and the wizardry of Firas Zahabi and the TriStar team. So this fight's going to be closer than I think some people expect. Now, the reason I favour Marc in this fight is because I don't think Haqparast is going to look to do anything on the ground. I think he's going to come at Marc. I think he's going to come at in straight lines as well. And even though the one thing that I think Marc's reined back on a little bit is all these flashy kicks and an overall exciting style. You saw that against Hooker, that sort of calmed down a little bit, and he sort of got back to basics, and he was doing okay against Hooker. I'm not sure if he was winning the fight or not. Who knows, because we didn't see the judges. But I think in this fight, if Marc wanted to go back to, you know, these flashy kicks and exciting style, I think that Nasrat Haqparast has got the style where he might be able to get away with doing that. I'm not sure if he will or not, but he could if he wanted to. Now, the one thing that I really favour Marc here with is I think he can use his wrestling. I think that he might struggle initially. You know, we saw Haqparast sprawl quite a lot against Held early on. Some really good sprawls as well, but eventually those takedowns came with persistence, and I think that Marc will persist if he wanted to get him down, and I think he could eventually get him down. And then he's got a decent wrestling game. You know, he works a lot. He works closely with Dustin Poirier a lot. At American Top Team, each camp, those two are always together. So he's only going to get better, and you can only get better working with a guy day in, day out like Pariah. And then he's been working with Thiago Alves as well in regards to his striking. So Thiago Alves, again, world-class Muay Thai fighter. I just think that Marc's got more tools in here. I think Haqparast is a good striker. He's crisp, he's clean, but I just don't think it's anything that Marc can't deal with. I think Marc has got good distance management. I think he can keep at range until he decides when he wants to go in. And if Haqparast decides to push forward and not let Marc have that distance management, I think Marc will level change and take him down. I think Marc's going to do it by decision. I'm not sure if he gets the knockout. He definitely can though. The one thing that I will say at this, especially at this weight, he has got one punch knockout power. We've seen it. We saw it twice in Bama. We saw it once in the UFC against Timu Pakalan. He's got one punch knockout power, so you always have to be careful for that. That right hand, the straight right, the overhand bomb is going to be there for Marc if Haqparast starts overextending on his strikes. But the thing is, like I say, I think Haqparast is quite crisp. I'm not sure that he gets caught with that, but we'll see. You know, we don't know. Either way, I think Marc could get it done by knockout. I think he could get it done by decision. I think the wrestling is going to play a big part in this fight. And I think Marc gets the win in this one. So moving on to the next fight, we've got Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts against David Zawada. Now, originally it was supposed to be Danny Roberts against Alan Jouban. Jouban pulled out last week, I think it was, so David Zawada stepped in. You know, a guy local from Germany, 16-3, spent a lot of time in KSW. He's got 3 or 4 fights over there, so he's definitely been battle tested. That's not an organisation that's any sort of joke whatsoever. It's legit. It's got legit competition in it, and this is a tough one to call. And the line's also really off with this. The last time I looked, Danny Roberts I think was a -400 favourite, which I think is crazy because David Zawada, 11 knockouts out of 16 fights. The guy can find a chin, and we saw what happened when Nordine Taleb touched that chin of Danny Roberts. He went out cold, and I just think that that opening and that opportunity is absolutely there for David Zawada. Ultimately, I'm going to pick Danny Roberts. I just think UFC experience. I think that David Zawada coming in on short notice, how in shape is he going to look? Has he been training? He obviously hasn't had a full camp unless he was training for another fight that I'm unsure about. But I would guess that he's not had a full camp. So a couple of things point into the direction of Danny Roberts. But man, I would not be laying money on Danny Roberts at this price. And I actually think David Zawada's got a lot of value on him as well. So, I've offered you 2 underdogs tonight with Aleksandar, Rakic and Fabinski, but if you really want to get greedy and add another underdog, I can't hate on anybody picking Zawada at his price. I mean, let's have a look what he's at now, because obviously lines change all the time, and I'm looking at David Zawada right now. It's a +320 underdog. That's crazy for me. That's absolutely crazy. He can definitely find Danny Roberts' chin. And don't be surprised if he does, but the pick is Danny Roberts, and I'm going to pick him to win again by decision. I think David Zawada's a good striker. I'm not sure if he'll get caught with a power shot to put him out. And moving on to the next fight, we've got a really, really interesting fight. One that, again, I'm really looking forward to, especially being at the event as well. We've got Marcin Tybura against Stefan Struve. And the pick's Tybura. I bet him last time out against Derek Lewis. He was winning the fight. He got knocked out in the 3rd round. It is what it is. You win some, you lose some in that respect. But I don't think Tybura is a bad fighter at all. Now, there's 2 reasons why I haven't bet him here. One is line. I mean, he opened up quite reasonably. I think it was like -160 he opened up. Now he's sort of like -245, and it's way too much juice to bet Marcin Tybura for my liking. But the one reason I would have been put off regardless is just the height difference. Now, I know that Struve has always got this height and reach advantage over every single fighter that he fights because he's just so big. You know, I think he's 6'11", maybe 7 foot. I think some places call it. But, you know, he's a big dude. He's got a 10-inch height and pretty much a 10-inch reach advantage over Tybura. So you've always got that doubt in your mind. Can my fighter close the distance and get in on Stefan Struve? But then you go back and watch his last fight against Arlovski, and Arlovski did it, and Arlovski managed to get takedowns as well, which is normally not really his forte. You know, Arlovski, his chin's quite suspect at the minute, but he didn't get put away by any strikes of Struve, and then, like I say, Struve was susceptible to the takedown. Now, Tybura has got a decent takedown and wrestling game, so I am wondering if he uses it, catches a hold of one of the long legs of Stefan Struve and takes him down to the mat. I think that if the fight stays stood up, though, I think that Tybura's definitely going to have to work harder for the win than what Struve would be if he wins, just because Struve can strike at distance and he can land, he can sort of land comfortably, whereas Tybura is going to have to get into range first before he can do or even think about doing anything. So I like Tybura to win this because I think he's got more ways to do it. I think he can get inside. I think if he does get inside, Struve will struggle because of the long limbs. You know, Tybura will be inside landing shots. But ultimately, I think that if it's not going Tybura's way and he can't get inside, and Struve is playing the distance game really well, I think he can just explode. I think Tybura can explode towards him with the takedown and get the fight to the mat and really work a top game. I mean, Struve's not a slouch on the mat either. He, you know, again, long legs. He throws up submissions in a decent jiu-jitsu game from bottom. So, you know, you rubber guard and sort of your triangles and arm bars and things like that. But I think Tybura is a bit too savvy to get caught by anything like that. I think that if he is on top, he will control. Whether Struve will stand up, I'm not sure. He might do, but I think it's a lot closer fight than the line suggests. But I do believe Tybura is going to get the win, and again, I'm going to pick him to win by a decision. Now, next fight we've got Vitor Miranda against Abu Azaitar. Now, I started to tape this to potentially fade Vitor Miranda, and ultimately that is what I'm going to do. It's definitely not a bet, but it is one that I do favour the newcomer Abu Azaitar. And again, similar to the Darko Stasic thing, when I looked at the records, he's 13-1, Abu Azaitar. Azaitar. 7 wins by knockout, 5 wins by decision. So again, it's a similar scenario as what I mentioned earlier. You know, if he can't find the knockout, he's got a great chance of winning a decision for outpointing Vitor Miranda. So he's 5-0 when going to the decision. Then you look at Vitor Miranda. If he doesn't get the knockout, he's got 9 wins out of 12 by knockout, but he's 1-5 on decisions. So that tells me that when Vitor Miranda can't get the knockout, he does tend to fall short on the judges' scorecards. His gas tank isn't great either. We saw that against Marvin Vettori in his last fight. You know, Miranda's 39 now as well. Like I've just mentioned, not a great gas tank. Looks for the knockout early. If he doesn't get it, he's in trouble. I actually think Azaitar could end up winning this quite comfortably. And if you're thinking about betting it, he is like sort of -175 as well, so it is definitely in a bettable range for me as well. I'm not going to make that bet. The reason being is I'm just happy with my 2 underdogs. I've got 3 units on 2 underdogs. I think they're both going to cash, and I'll the profit on the night will just be ridiculous. There's no need for me to start risking any more money on this card. I'm extremely happy with what I've got. But like I said, I think Abu Azaitar is definitely bettable in this spot. I know he's a debutant, and you've always got to be a bit careful. So don't go max betting him or anything like that. But honestly, I think he's going to get the win. If he doesn't knock Miranda out, he'll win by decision. So yeah, he will have to weather a storm. Just take that into consideration in the first round. Vitor Miranda will come out hard, but ultimately, if he weathers that storm, that should be all she wrote, because Miranda will gas and he'll lose power with that as well, and also slow down. So from there, Azaitar should find it pretty straightforward to get the win. So yeah, I think Azaitar's going to knock him out, though. I think it'll be late in the fight when Miranda's totally gassed. I just think Miranda will just have had enough by that point, and I think Azaitar gets the knockout mid to late fight. The next fight, we've got Glover Teixeira against Corey Anderson. Now, this originally was supposed to be Teixeira against Latifi. Thank God that they found a replacement for when Latifi pulled out in Corey Anderson, because like I said, this is an event I'm going to live. I really wanted all the card to stay intact, and although there has been a few dropouts, Joban, Latifi that I've just mentioned, and one in the main event I'll talk about soon, the UFC have done a great job, and credit to them for matching those fighters that were left without a fight up with other good fighters at that sort of level, because no one has been given an easy ride with these replacement fighters, I can assure you of that. So Corey Anderson, obviously a D3 wrestler, a guy that I cashed against Patrick Cummins as well, so really happy with that. I just think though in this fight, I think Glover's going to have too much for him. I think that Glover's got a decent wrestling game himself, do not write him off in that aspect, albeit it's not D3 quality, but I think that Glover's strength and his wrestling side to his game as well will be good enough to either stuff takedowns, throw Corey off as he's trying to take him down, or even reverse in a scramble, because we all know about Glover Teixeira's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, solid black belt. So yeah, I think that Corey's best weapon here is to get the fight to the mat. We know that. Glover will know that. I think he can prevent this fight from going to the mat. Maybe not early on. Maybe Corey does have some success early on, but I think eventually Glover will start stuffing the takedown, seeing him coming from a long way out, and yeah, just dealing with it. And from there, I think that you're then looking at Glover's power versus Corey Anderson's chin, and I think it matches up well for Glover in regards to getting the knockout, which is what I think is going to happen. I wouldn't be totally surprised if Corey Anderson, won a 29-28 or a split on the scorecards to get the win. It's not, beyond the realm of possibility, but yeah, I can't look past the Glover win at this point. But the one thing I will mention as well is, I wouldn't bet against a divisional wrestler. I know somebody in my comments last week when I said I won't bet against a wrestler, and some guy, throwing a bit of banter out there saying, oh yeah, but you bet against Patrick Cummins, who was a D1 wrestler, against Corey Anderson that's D3. But the bottom line is I faded a divisional wrestler with another divisional wrestler, But yeah, I wouldn't bet against Corey Anderson in this fight, but I do think Glover Teixeira knocks him out. And then we move into the main event, and this was a little bit of a mess really, because these guys were supposed to have been fighting on the Chile card. Shogun and Volkan Ozdemir were supposed to have been fighting on the Chile card. Volkan Ozdemir had some issues because of what happened with the law in America. I think it was something along the lines of, and again, don't hold me to this, it's just what I heard. I believe it was something along the lines of some guy in a bar touched up Volkan Ozdemir's girlfriend, and Volkan Ozdemir just reacted like any other man would have done in that situation, but obviously got in trouble for it. So there was some problems with the Chile card. They moved him to Hamburg, and I believe that he was having maybe issues again. So what they did is they needed somebody for Alexander Gustafsson. Gustafsson needed to fight. They couldn't find anybody to match Gustafsson at the top of the division. So what they did is they pulled Ozdemir off this fight and dropped him against Gustafsson. And those two will meet at UFC 227. I actually think that's a great fight. But at this point, I was devastated because I really wanted to see Shogun fight live. He's a legend. He's one of my favourite fighters of all time. I'm currently looking at his round 5 figure that's rested on my on my TV stand, along with my Chuck Liddell round 5 figure. You know, I'm a massive fan of Shogun. I really didn't want him to come off the card, so I really want to thank UFC for doing, you know, working hard and getting a replacement in, and what a replacement it is in Anthony Smith. I think the fight is going to be an absolute firefight. I think if you tape Shogun, who a lot of people are under the impression before they run the tape back that he's completely done, I don't think he is completely done. You look back at his last fight against Jean Vellante, and people are like, oh yeah, but that's Jean Vellante, you know, he's not the fighter he used to be. But I'll tell you right now, Jean Vellante turned up in that fight. He wasn't a Jean Vellante that was plodding forward that we saw against Sam Alvey. This was a Jean Vellante that wanted to take Shogun's head clean off. And the fight was a really good fight. And I just think that I question Shogun's durability right now. I don't question his ability, his technique, his skill set. That's all. I'm telling you now, that is all 100% there. Now, I am going to be going with Anthony Smith in this fight. I think he is going to win. I just think that it comes down to durability here. I think that Smith will be able to take Shogun's power, whereas I don't think Shogun would be able to take Smith's power. I think Shogun's just taken too much over a long and illustrious career. And yeah, I just think it's going to be a firefight. I think that Shogun's going to come out hard. I don't think he's going to sit back. That's not the way he fights. This is why I love the guy. And obviously Smith's always game as well. He'll always come forward at every opportunity. I think both guys will wing bombs. I think if Shogun can catch Smith with something hard and put him down, you know, we saw Maheta Santos put Smith down a couple of times, subsequently finishing him as well. You know, again, it's a massive possibility. And you look at the odds, Shogun's a plus 205 underdog, and again, I think the line's a little off, especially as Anthony Smith hasn't had much time to prepare for this fight either. So, like I say, I can't look past Smith just because of the durability thing. I think at some point over 5 rounds, because remember it is 5 rounds, I think at some point over 5 rounds, Smith will be able to crack Shogun, and I think he will win by knockout. So that's the breakdowns done. Just to quickly run over my bets, I've got 3 units on Aleksandar Rakic at plus 138 to win 4.1 units, and I've got 3 units on Bartosz Fabinski at plus 185 to win 5.5 units. So 2 nice underdogs in this fight. Remember, we are only 2 cards away from these bets being free. From August, they will be charged. I'll talk a little bit about that closer to the time. I'm debating whether to put a couple of tweets out to explain what I'm going to do, or I'm debating just to do a podcast just to get it all out there in the open so everyone knows what's going to happen and the process that I'm going to take and things like that. So I'm unsure what's going to happen in that respect, but it's not going to be, you know, I've had a few comments of people, you know, being a bit upset and disappointed that my picks aren't going to be free, but I'm not doing this to extort anybody. The prices are going to be affordable. It's not something that that I'm going to try and absolutely rinse anybody for. You know, definitely going to be affordable, and the bottom line is I'll make your money back. So whatever you pay me, you're going to get back, and then you profit from the winning bets long term as well. So it's not all doom and gloom. I've also got another interesting thing that I'm going to introduce as well, from a service perspective. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I've already spoken to a few random people about it that I sort of feel that it might suit them more than others, and I've had a lot of positive feedback. So I think it's going to be something that is going to interest a lot of people, especially handicappers as well. So like I say, just keep your eyes out. All will be revealed soon. I probably will do it through a podcast so I can get my words out and explain it a lot better rather than doing it over a thread of like 10 tweets. So that's all she wrote, guys. I just want to give a little public service announcement though. Due to, again, me flying out to Germany on Friday, I will be sorting everything out for my trip on the Thursday, which means the final day of me adding content to the Newsome MMA website for this fight week will be Wednesday, unfortunately. You know, I know that's not going to suit a lot of people because it's a Sunday card, so I know that some fight week content will be coming a day earlier than it usually does, but, I don't want to talk too much about it, and you know, a lot of people work hard in this industry, but I'm no different to those guys that are working hard. So you know, this is my first UFC event. I've tried to get to, you know, every UK event for probably the last 4 or 5 years at least, and I've had no luck due to the third party ticket sites, you know, developing bots that hoover all the tickets up and spit them out at 4 times the price. So I'm finally going to my first UFC event. I am taking a little break. It's only going to be 4 days. So I do apologise to anybody that does miss any fight week content through my website, but everything will be back to normal on the UFC Calgary card next week. And just quickly, the usual quick message from myself. If you're listening to this podcast on the Newsome MMA YouTube channel, it's also available on the Newsome MMA website too, along with all the other additional content surrounding all aspects of MMA. It really does have something for everybody on the website, from betting advice, MMA podcasts, brand new DraftKings section, content coming from Heavy Duty Fight Management. And finally, also please check out my sponsor of Newsome MMA, which is CVD Life UK. You can access those offers from my sponsorship by clicking any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website. And also, if you type in the promo code Newsome MMA, you'll also get 15% off your order as well. So that's it from me, guys. Enjoy the fights on Sunday. Thank you and goodbye.